The facts are the facts, the texts are the texts, and I think that the evidence will be clear.
That Ventura had a choice and that she chose to participate in those sexual encounters.
Where she is entertaining other people in the bedroom. He enjoyed having the freak-offs.
She's being asked specifically about the drug use.
She is clearly...
Day 4 of the trial started calmly, but everything changed when the prosecution presented secret messages between Diddy and his ex-girlfriend Cassie Ventura. These texts contradicted everything Diddy had publicly claimed for months. The courtroom erupted into chaos. The judge had to slam the gavel to regain control as Diddy's lawyers scrambled to calm him down. Diddy's reaction was intense and emotional, signaling that the messages held damning evidence. According to reporters, it was, the first time they had seen such a massive celebrity unravel so publicly. The moment was described as unprecedented. Diddy's breakdown wasn't just a display of emotion, it was a crack in his entire narrative. It suggested that he knew exactly what those messages could expose. This emotional outburst changed the tone of the trial and made everyone, judge, jury, press, and public, realize that this was no longer just about public image. It was about truth, power, and control. And for the first time, Diddy wasn't in control. His carefully crafted image began to collapse under the weight of the truth, and the courtroom felt the full impact of a superstar's facade falling apart.
Ventura on the witness stand for a fourth day in the federal criminal trial against hip-hop mogul Sean Diddy Combs. The defense continuing cross-examination this morning, confronting her with dozens of her own messages, many explicit, hoping to convince the jury she was an eager sexual partner who matched Combs' desires. "I'm always ready to freak off," one message said.
She was into the freak-offs herself and was like a willing participant and was into all the freaky stuff, and essentially that was the crux of what they were trying to do yesterday.
And do you think they proved that or not?
I mean, there's texts like that from 2009, "I'm always ready to freak off." There was some other texts where she was referencing like hitting him up about the FOs, is what they were referring to him. To me, like, yes, this doesn't look good, but at the same time, I think the timeline is crucial here. And these are texts from 2009, man. That was when they were first getting in the relationship. She was young. Obviously, they were in the honeymoon stage, and she was stoked to like, oh my God, I'm with Diddy. I'm living this lavish lifestyle. Of course, she's going to be saying things that she knows will curry favor with him.
The morning began with calm proceedings, but when the prosecution hinted at new, hidden messages between Diddy and Cassie, everything shifted. Diddy's reaction was immediate. His eyes widened, his face drained of color, and he began breathing heavily. One reporter said, "In 15 years of covering courtrooms, I've never seen a reaction like this." Diddy suddenly shoved his chair back, stood up, and began walking toward the judge's bench, clearly shaken. His attorneys and security rushed in to stop him, while the courtroom erupted in whispers and gasps. The judge called for an immediate recess. And here's the thing. The messages hadn't even been read aloud yet. The announcement alone triggered the outburst. When the court resumed and the messages were revealed, it all made sense. Diddy already knew what was in them, and he knew what they meant for his image, his case, and his future. That one moment, his panic, his anger, his inability to stay composed, was a clear sign of guilt to many in the room. It proved just how damaging those unseen messages were, and it set the tone for what could be a career-ending trial.
Great, I said she was ready, and I think she's demonstrating that. The facts are the facts, the texts are the texts, and I think that the evidence will be clear as the case goes on and Cassie's testimony goes on, and we'll see what the jury does.
And finally, we'll talk about Justin Bieber, because he is finally addressing the Diddy stuff. There's been long speculation that somehow he's involved.
Surprised it took so long to address.
Well, he's clearing that up now, and also we'll talk about how people are scared for Justin Bieber because they think he's in a cult. They have to have
By the end of today, Cassie will be done. So they have all day today to ask her whatever they want to ask her.
Because obviously, she's about to pop. And that's like...
Which is totally understandable.
So if she did pop, if she did give birth, let's say the technical term, over the weekend, you know what would happen then, Devin?
I don't.
mistrial, baby.
Why do you say that? What?
Because she's due back on the stand to give testimony. And if she can't give testimony anymore...
No, she's giving testimony today.
I know. I was saying, what if...
she gave birth and then
that's why. That's the
delayed.
reason. If she wasn't pregnant, I don't think the judge would have said you have to finish by today.
Oh, yeah. No, 100%. Obviously. That's the whole,
okay.
That's
Obviously.
the whole crux of the argument.
Obviously.
Yeah.
You didn't explicitly, spell it out.
But Diddy's team is also pissed off because they're like, we want as much time as we can have.
Her voice is low at times. The defense did tell her if it's too much, I can read them, but there were many times early on this morning where she read some of those explicit details where she is clearly excited about a freak off and talks about entertaining other people in the bedroom.
And what has Diddy's demeanor been in this cross-examination as well?
There was a moment where Sean Combs was nodding in agreement when they brought up a message that he sent her where he said, one of my favorite times of the freak-offs is when we're able to make love after. And then she responds, that's the same for me. Now, what's interesting here is that does match what she told prosecutors or what she's been telling the jury all along, which is she did this and she said, but she really wanted to spend time with him after the fact. So he was shaking his head at this message where he's almost, I guess, agreeing that he did say, without him saying it, he enjoyed having the freak offs and then having sex with her after the fact. And her saying, I agree with...
The prosecution laid it out masterfully. First came the testimonies and physical evidence. Then the texts, hundreds of them from 2016 to 2019. These weren't just random messages. They showed a clear pattern. Emotional manipulation, threats, control, and attempts to silence Cassie. One text from Diddy read, I made you, and I can break you. Cassie's reply, please stop threatening me. I'm scared. Diddy responded, you should be. Chilling. The courtroom went dead silent. The messages aligned perfectly with Cassie's testimony. Every story she told now had written proof. He'd apologize, then gift her something, then threaten her again. One text, allegedly sent after a physical altercation, read, I lost control last night. Another, your silence is paid for. Break it, and it's over for you. These messages tore apart the image Diddy had spent decades building. This wasn't just a fall from grace, it was a free fall. The prosecution didn't need to say much more. The texts spoke for themselves, and they screamed guilty. Everyone in that courtroom, including the judge, could see it. This was no misunderstanding. It was manipulation, intimidation, and fear, laid out in black and white.
Other things that the Diddy's team tried to do was show how they had breaks, and she was with Michael B. Jordan and was with Kid Cudi for a minute. But during that time period, she was still having freak-offs with Diddy, and I think that was them trying to show, this wasn't a controlling thing. Here she was, hooking up with other people. She just was into the freak-offs.
I kind of buy that, to be honest.
So...
she is out of the freak-offs then. She is... when she's with Kid Cudi, or allegedly with Michael B. Jordan, she's kind of out of the freak-offs if she wants to be. So why do you keep going back? Yeah. I know it's kind of like a mental, she still loves Diddy. Diddy was jealous about her.
Oh, yeah, because that was another thing that the prosecutors were trying to do, is show that, that they had a very jealous relationship. She would get jealous when he's with Kid Cudi. Also, Kim Porter, Cassie would be jealous of Kim Porter.
Right.
Trying to show that, Cassie, you were in love with this guy. That's why you were jealous.
Right.
So, this was a real relationship.
It was just interesting to see Chris Brown.
I mean, he's always coming up somewhere, dude.
He is.
Chris Brown.
All right. Final story of the week. Justin Bieber is not a victim of Diddy. So this was one of those rumors or whatever that was flying around in the months leading up to the trial. And to be honest, there was quite a few rumors flying around. Was there minors involved? Says if no other celebrity was part of freak-offs, why are they in hiding? Are they in hiding though?
I don't think they're in hiding. I just think other celebrities didn't want to insert themselves. No one wants to be tied to Diddy one way or the other.
Even if you're at a white party, just having a lot of fun, one of Diddy's white parties, you don't want to be...
For years, Diddy crafted a public image of being Cassie's respectful, loving partner. He spoke about their relationship in glowing terms, gave her credit for his emotional growth, and insisted their breakup was mutual and peaceful. But in court, that image was shattered. The text told a different story, one of dominance, threats, and emotional abuse. One message read, "I built your life. I'll end it if you cross me." Another, "Your silence is paid for." These weren't just offhand comments. They were deliberate, repeated, and strategic. The prosecution created a timeline chart comparing Diddy's public statements with his private messages from the same days. The contrast was jaw-dropping. On the day he told the world they amicably split, he was threatening Cassie behind the scenes. The courtroom watched his carefully managed reputation crumble in real time. Diddy didn't just lie to the public, he lied to himself. The messages weren't just proof of misconduct. They were proof of a man who manipulated the narrative while privately terrorizing someone who trusted him. His two worlds, public charm and private control, had finally collided, and the truth was impossible to ignore.
But the defense said Ventura's participation in the freak-offs was at times her idea, showing a text message from days earlier that said, "Baby, I want to FO so bad." "You proposed a freak-off," a defense attorney said. "You kept asking him." Combs' lawyers revealed he overdosed on painkillers in 2012, asking Ventura, "Were the worst years associated in any way with his drug use?" "Yeah, I would say." The defense hoping to convince the jury Combs became violent not to coerce Ventura into sex, but because he was an addict. They argue he may have been abusive, but that he's not guilty of sex trafficking.
Yeah.
And then I think things might have just spiraled out of control. And at the end, do I think that she wanted to do those things? No.
No, I don't think she wanted to do it at the end.
But
she
it
could have
does
been more explicit about it.
True.
I wish there was a paper trail of her being more, because then he'd be cooked.
Yes, I agree with that. And so these texts don't look good because it does make it look like she was into the freak off.
While Diddy exploded in court, Cassie remained calm, composed, and focused. Wearing a simple black pantsuit, no makeup, no flashy jewelry, just presence. She sat silently as the messages were read aloud. When the most threatening text was shown, "You should be scared." Her hand trembled briefly, but she immediately regained control. She didn't look at Diddy, not once. That silence spoke volumes. At one point, when a particularly cruel message appeared,
those
she closed her eyes,
where you have no choice but to pay attention and almost be flabbergasted, obviously, at some of what you're hearing, because it's not only just insight into somebody's sex life, but the details are disturbing at times, especially during that prosecution testimony when we saw some of the alleged abuse, or we saw pictures of her after a beating of some kind, according to her. But the jurors are definitely paying attention. I don't see anyone that's not keeping their focus on Cassie Ventura, and also I noticed them taking notes a lot of times.
And the children, as they were exiting court yesterday, two of the girls were seen crying. How emotional have they been in court?
Again, I cannot imagine if that was my father or somebody close to me up there and having to hear details of their sex life. Those are young women. They lost their mother, one of them, the twins. So no one can probably quite understand what it is that they're going through, but I think that's something that you think about on both sides, to look at Alex Fine, which is Cassie Ventura's husband, and think about him having to listen to all that's being said about the type of woman that Cassie Ventura was versus the person that's expecting, their third child together now. So whether it's Combs's family or Ventura's family that's there to support her, her brother and her husband, Alex Fine, I think it's difficult on both sides. Seen him taking notes from the beginning. I see him put his glasses on. He gets very close to the screen when they're reading some of those text messages. So he's paying attention.
Now, Ventura confirmed that she and Combs had conversations about a swingers lifestyle, but that the freak-offs, they were very different.
Yeah, so she talked about this idea where I guess Combs wanted her to watch him have sex with another woman. She said that happened 2 or 3 times, but that he mentioned it frequently.
Kim Porter came up today in testimony. What was the significance there?
The defense said early on that this case would be about infidelity, love, and jealousy. And this is where they brought that up today when they brought up Kim Porter's name. The defense asked Cassie Ventura, are you jealous or were you jealous of Kim Porter? And Ventura sort of contemplated, but did get to this moment where she said, knowing that Combs spent holidays with his family, which meant with Porter, did bother her. And she admitted that. They also pointed out that there was testimony where she talked about being insanely jealous overall as a girlfriend. So, yeah.
We're hearing the judge wants Cassie off the stand tomorrow. Will the prosecution and the defense get equal time?
Yeah, as long as there aren't any additional motions, I think that is the goal, to have her off the stand by tomorrow.
Why do you think that? What's the reasoning behind wanting her off the stand tomorrow?
In the very beginning, Rachel, they told us that.
A deep breath and nodded to her lawyer. It was like watching someone reclaim power they had once been stripped of. The courtroom noticed. Even the judge paused to acknowledge her composure. Between them sat 30 feet and a full line of security officers, visually symbolizing the protection she never had in private life. Cassie didn't say a word in that moment, but she didn't need to. Her strength wasn't loud, it was steady. In contrast to Diddy's chaotic unraveling, Cassie stood firm. That contrast became the most powerful statement in the entire trial. She wasn't just telling her story anymore. She was living proof of survival. And in that courtroom, for the first time, she was finally being heard.